It's Tuesday, 14th of October, and I'm talking about Trump's Gaza plan, which sounds a lot of nonsense, really, to me. But, you know, the main thing is it might work because Donald Trump says, no, this is what you're doing to Israel, basically. So, because of that, it might work. But that's the only reason, because it's actually really a surrender. Everything about it's a surrender from the side who you could call if it was David and Goliath, you could call the David side, really, they're using homemade weapons. They're totally cut off from the world, including their uh, so-called allies like Egypt and Saudi Arabia, etc. Um, all those governments want them, defeated. Really, I think, so that because they're only worried about being dictatorships. They're not bothered, really. I don't think. Um, yeah, so I'm just looking at it. I mean, I've not really looked at it thinking because I imagine it's a lot of nonsense. I've sort of heard roughly about it. I mean, the main bit says that there's going to be a ceasefire straight away, humanitarian stuff. The 20 hostages left are all going to get freed. They're all men. I don't know if they were all young men, probably. Possibly they were all IDF, I'm not sure. One of them turned out to be a specialist unit IDF guy. We never get told that during the thing. And that was the boyfriend of Noah, that lady who looks to be of mixed race or foreign extraction in some way, but she's regarded as one of the, well, they've got a sort of system in Israel, but she's in the first tier, really. That's the first tier, and then there's everyone else, really, I would say. Um, Even though she's a foreign, she probably can't get buried in a cemetery of that community strictly, in strict terms. But yeah, so yeah, and she got rescued a while ago, and the IDF regarded it as a magnificent operation, and I think about 300 civilians were killed or something like that in the marketplace. I think they'd let her stay above air, above, not in a tunnel, above a tunnel, and a sort of thing, mate, to sort of I don't know, be nicer to her or whatever, I don't know. And when bombing was going on or something, I think I heard that the, the, the captives or the people holding her put their mattresses over her to protect her and that, but she got rescued. But I think 300 civilians get killed. But it doesn't look like it's worrying her too much, right? It doesn't look. But I don't know. Um, but anyway, our IDF specialist guy, he get released anyway. So that's because it looks like the only thing that Israel is bothered about with the hostages. I mean, most of them possibly weren't bothered about the hostages at all. But I don't know that. It looks in polls. It looks as if they all want Palestinians quote gone, and it depends how you think they would be gone. Um, I mean, the polls are probably even worse than that, but it looks like across the board, really. And yeah, but some of them seem to be concerned about the hostages for some reason. But it looks like the people concerned about hostages weren't bothered about Palestinians, what happens to them. And possibly now, well, I've had ones in the past that have been released saying that all Palestinians are guilty, etc. So yeah. Anyway, so it's like, I mean, the only reason this might work is because Trump might tell Israel, you need to behave, basically. So it might work in that sense. But it's really a surrender thing, and it is a bit ironic because it looks a bit David and Goliath, say, times 100, when you've got all the might of the USA and Israel against people who've built a tunnel network totally cut off and they're using homemade weapons. And after 2 years, they couldn't be beat. Um, the thing about the Holocaust and that is never forget and all that, So Keir Starmer and all that in January will be going to the never forget, never again, Holocaust memorial, etc. Uh, Trump and leader of France and Germany, etc. So all the might of America, France, Germany, Britain, etc. against these people in tunnels. And it is ironic as well. I think symbolically. I mean, I don't know if everyone concerned are atheists. I know the Palestinians aren't, but you've got the seven candles, all this sort of stuff. How does that compare? That wasn't on social media or it wasn't on video or anything like that. Seven candles, all that stuff. How does that compare to the tunnel network, homemade weapons, all of, and plus what's been done to the civilians, etc. That's all on video forever. Although an Israel fanatic in America has bought over TikTok, and an American Israel fanatic, and they've also American Israel fanatics have bought over CBS News, I think, and they put in Barry Weiss as a head, and she's an Israel fanatic as well. So I don't know. Maybe after a while, maybe MAGA supporters might be angry about this. Not yet, anyway, it seems. But yeah, it's as if our social media is going to get thing with them. And even we saw Netanyahu a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago or something, saying we need to sort out social media, and he was saying it's good that we've got TikTok, etc., or Israel supporter fanatics. What else do we need? And then the group who were there, it was all influencers who are getting paid to do posts by Israel, American influencers. And some of them said TikTok, and he said, yes, TikTok. He said, Elon's a friend. We need to convince Elon. So basically what he's saying is he needs to not let stuff go up about it, basically. So Americans seem okay with that at the moment. Yeah, I don't know if that backfired or I'm amazed to let that be released. But he did, and I think it's the worst PR disaster ever. It was American influencers and Netanyahu and Israel are going to pay them per post. And then I saw some of them when I looked at it, and they've got like 40,000, followers. That's hardly anyway, really. But maybe they're doing it right across. And now they've got TikTok as well, and they're saying they need to get Elon. And of course, Elon did say something, I would say, fair-minded about the thing 2 years ago. Then the next thing, he's over in Israel with Netanyahu showing him about, and suddenly he sounds like just another American elite talking about supporting Israel. Really. That's what it sounded like to me. So I don't know what his situation is now. I mean, on immigration, he seems to have, I would say, moved to a more sensible thing. He was sensible to a degree, but then he was wanting the golden visas and stuff like that, and but I've not heard him talk about that recently. He's sounding more sensible on it. I think he was, first of all, he was talking sort of civic nationalist, sort of. Yeah. Anyway, this plan, I mean, I'm not really interested in it. Like I say, if Trump tells Netanyahu you have to do something, you do. But it wouldn't surprise me if Netanyahu actually offered him this. Because with Trump, you're talking about a sort of boaster guy, and if you've ever came across a boaster person in your life, whether it's work or school or whatever, you know how ridiculous they are. They sort of see everything in a frame set of them being great, and I mean they're actually a bit crazy, really. So, and this seems to be what Trump's like. So he's going on about this Nobel Prize, like Muttley with a medal, a gold medal, basically. So maybe Netanyahu said to him, I'll do all I can to get you the Nobel Peace Prize, because this ceasefire came like 2 days before they were announcing the Nobel Peace Prize. But what I don't understand is why anybody respects the Nobel Peace Prize, or the Nobel Prizes. I mean, I don't give a, it doesn't, it's totally meaningless to me. They gave Obama the prize, I think, the day after he got elected, so he hadn't even done anything. And it wouldn't surprise me if they wanted to take it back at the end of his term, but so it's a lot of nonsense, really. It's a lot of left-wing nonsense. And they didn't win it anyway. They gave it to some Venezuelan person that supports him, funnily enough. Yeah, so, yeah, So let's look at this. So I'm wondering if it does come down to that, maybe it just comes down to Netanyahu knowing that he's a boaster. And then, of course, America's spent billions. They've given them every weapon that they've asked for. I mean, the idea for doing it, they were using, missiles, American missiles and stuff. And then at the end, they were actually just using old vehicles crammed with bombs and blowing the place up, and really to destroy the place, cheaply, as cheap as possible. Uh, yeah. So really, it's been absolutely appalling how the West can think of themselves as being associated with this. It just goes to show to me, really, that you really can't trust anything that you really believe in, especially the West. I mean, I would say this is the one exception, really, in big terms, I can think of throughout my life. This is the one exception. And it ended up Britain even recognising Palestine when we actually caused it. And we recognised Israel in 1950. I think when Israel said they were going independent, they went reneged against the UN plan, because Britain gave the area away to the United Nations. And then in 1948, when they moved lots of people out of Ashdod and all over, they moved all the Palestinians out. A lot of them ended up in Gaza. So apart from Nazareth, because the Canadian leader of Haganah there, he was an Israel fanatic. He refused orders, so the people of Nazareth were allowed to stay, and to this day that's regarded as a Muslim area, and the Israeli first class seen him as a problem, and the Russian guy who's big over there and a big Israel fanatic, he said that should be included in the sort any peace deal. Well, he did say that 10, 15 years ago, that Nazareth should be taken out of Israel and put into the whatever was given to Palestine at the time. But now he's probably saying they shouldn't get anything at all, because they're doing away with the West Bank, really. So anyway, the point from the point of view of the other side, they may as well just do the ceasefire, because they get an immediate ceasefire. It doesn't matter one way or the other, really. That's what people are saying anyway. There was a lot of pressure from the other Arab countries, apparently. They've given up all their hostages, so that's a risk. 20 hostages, Israel have released about 2,000 prisoners. They've already gone back on one. And what I've noticed in these deals, Israel always seem to be bad faith, and they do bad faith in these things. Yeah? And what they're probably planning to do is break the ceasefire or whatever, go at it again, and they'll try and kill all the prisoners that they've released, because in previous times when they've released prisoners, they've ended up targeting them with drones and etc. So, because when you think it gets them all out of jail, and then they're probably going to kill them anyway, and the Western citizens won't know about it. So, whereas if they killed them in jail, it'd be a big story. And they've also gone against it, reneged on it already. And by the way, the Palestinians weren't even asked about this plan. It was done between really Netanyahu and Trump, and probably some Arab countries, gotta say. But they probably didn't get a final change of plans. I think Israel changed a lot of it. And yeah, so they've given up their 20 hostages, and they'd done this in January as well, if you recall, and it was all very civilised. Some of the hostages that they gave up kissed their captors on their foreheads, and one of them done that this time again. Whereas the Palestinians are all sort of getting whipped when they're coming out. They're all crouched down. They're all be treated badly, and this is meant to be the side of the West. This is Euro-Western values are meant to be that side. Whereas the other side, they're getting released and their captors are kissing their captors in the head. Well, one or two of them anyway, It just goes to show you the difference. I mean, yes. So immediate ceasefire. So we've had this before. Like I say, I'm guessing Israel would like to. We've already had Palestine wiped off the map, and now they'd like to drive them all into the sea. Almost literally, maybe, but possibly more into Egypt or whatever. A lot of people will get killed on the way as well. Um, Meanwhile, we have to support it, through the British government and Americans and Germany, France, etc. It's our values. Um, so the hostage prisoner exchanges went ahead. Yeah. But Israel have already went against that. Because the one guy that could unite Palestinians apparently is Mamoun Barghouti or some Barghouti. He's been in prison for 20 years, probably for nothing really. I think he was part of Fatah. Um, but now they've reneged, they're not releasing him. So they've already, and this is what the other side's got to put up with. Full aid flow, and apparently all aid's meant to go in. And apparently it seems that Palestine's a very clannish area, and there's a few clans that were helping Israel. And now there's been some sort of assassinations in the currently freed part of Gaza where the Israelis have pulled back. They've only pulled back 55% of Gaza, however. It's only about the size of New Jersey and New York or something. Yeah, but there's been clans that have killed a top journalist that helped Israel, and then they weren't allowing the food aid in, etc. Any food aid they got in. So there's sort of clan stuff going on at the moment. So Trump said he's going to let the main group police at the moment be the police in Gaza. That's because they're the ones that probably bring the best law and order to the area, in truth. So the initial Israeli withdrawal withdrew its forces to breeze designated lines within the Gaza Strip. They're holding about 55% or something. So phase two, I don't think they'll even get to phase two actually, but in a way it doesn't matter. Just keep the peace for as long as possible, and then that should make it really impossible to go back. When I say impossible, what I mean is for the West to support Israel, basically, going back, because they want it, probably. Demilitarisation. An independent monitoring group would oversee. See, this is the thing. Israel's a nuclear power. It's never said that. It's got nuclear weapons. It's got the whole range of weapons down below that, including anything that they want from America. And they've not to give up any weapons, but this group that's got homemade weapons have to give up their weapons and their tunnels, which are the things like the Seven Candles story, the things that have kept them going all these years. They have to give all that up. Basically, they'll have nothing to defend themselves with, whereas the nuclear armed side hasn't to do anything at all. I mean, it doesn't make any sense at all. Just let them keep their weapons for now, as long as they're not doing anything. International Stabilisation Force. Composed of US. I mean, that happened in Northern Ireland as well, but at that time, it wasn't until there was enough trust, because Britain created that problem as well. It created the Palestine problem. I would say Britain were a lot fairer than Israel. I would regard Israel as. So, Stabilisation Force. This is meant to be a US. Trump's already said the US won't be involved, I think. Maybe they'll be involved in sense externally or something. Arab, to provide security, train vetted Palestinian forces and oversee the transition. Well, we'll see how that goes. Transitional government, technocratic, and this is where Blair's meant to come in, I think, but no way can you accept Blair. I mean, I'm surprised that Blair's letting himself forward into that. Reconstruction and economic. I mean, the whole place is like a lunar, it's like the moon, really, apparently, but for about 10% of it or something. That's deliberate, that's what Israel done to it. Then in January everyone's to go to the Never Forget Memorial, a major international effort to rebuild Rundell. One thing about the Palestinians as well is the Palestinians are remarkable builders, innovators, education. They really value education. I mean, even for their daughters, and when their family, their children done well at education, they would go out and fire their guns, and the government had to tell them to stop that, or whoever was running the country told them that they had to stop that. I mean, firing guns in the air is a very bad sign, in my opinion. It's a sign of a pretty unruly thingy, but in terms of education, building, innovation, they're real powerhouses of Palestinians, and it makes me wonder if Israel are afraid of that, and maybe they've used it in ways. And workers, they're incredible workers as well, from what I've seen. Incredibly, the amount of abuse they take as well. So I've no doubt that if they're allowed to, they'll build a real powerhouse of a economy, But at the same time, I doubt there's one traffic light in Gaza or the West Bank. It wouldn't surprise me, So they don't like that. They're sort of clannish, I think, and they don't like that sort of law, rule and order for everyone equal as strangers. It's all clannish stuff, and so that's not a good thing, So, I mean, I'm not sure how they would do with town planning and stuff, but I wonder if Israel is a bit worried about that, that they'll become the country that people want to do business with, in that area. So reconstruction and economic development, etc. And I really hope that America isn't too involved in that. I don't know. I can see that going really badly. No forced displacement or annexation. So this is a big thing. None will be forced to leave, and Israel will agree not to occupy or annex the territory. Well, that is a big, big thing. Still no sign of a Palestinian state from them, but that is a big thing. Like I say, when Israel said we were in the country now in 1948 when they done their military thing, a war, it took America 8 minutes to recognise them, and here we are, sort of 80 years later, and Palestine isn't still recognised by America. And this is one reason I don't agree with electoral systems being, one person leading and all that. It should be direct democracy. That should be a referendum, that sort of question. Because apparently a YouGov poll before this 2-year war, it's been on 75 years really, but 2 year, it's not really a war actually, invasion really, you could call it worse. A YouGov poll said that sympathy for Israel in the UK was around about 10%. So when you watch our media, you would think it's like 60% or 70% or something, but it turns out 10% sympathised with Israel. And now it's 12%. So after everything Israel's done, the sympathy for them went up a little bit, but now it's back down to 12%. But it was even less before this. So if you go by that poll, that's the only thing that really matters, isn't it? So in a referendum, I would have imagined that we'd have been a lot more sympathetic to Palestine a long, long time ago, whenever you want to decide. Yeah, so pathway to statehood, the plan holds out the possibility, that's the important bit, of self-determination and statehood, contingent on Palestinian Authority reform and other conditions. So we don't know what they are, but we've been through all this before with the Oslo peace accords, that was may all been done by 1999. I think Palestine sort of went along with it. Israel sort of thing with that, So this is the initial phase, has been seen as a ceasefire. So all the hostages, Israel have got all their hostages back now, so are they going to do a sort of false flag thing and start the war again? Because if they do, they really have to start soon, I say, because if it doesn't start for a while, it might make it difficult for Britain's leaders and Germany leaders, although probably they will go along with it actually, when I think about it. Trump will probably do anything. And I thought when Trump was over in Israel yesterday and that about this plan, and he was saying that Sheldon Adelson was always phoning him, he was a very aggressive guy, but he loved him, talk about stereotypes. I mean, He says that Sheldon would phone him and say, "Can I come over?" At any time of the day, he would phone him and say, "Can I come over?" And he'd say to him, "Sheldon, that's not how it works. I'm the president." But he said he loved him anyway and come over. And he was basically telling you that Sheldon and Miriam, his wife, are basically running American policy, really. That's the way I sort of took it. He's saying, "Miriam, stand up." She was there as well. I think she's worth 60 billion. He said she's never answered if she's Israel first or America first or whatever. I mean, is that not the whole idea? You're meant to be America first. So the whole thing's a total joke. If you said it about any other country, I think the MAGA supporters would be furious. But I'm wondering if the MAGA fans are getting fed up with it anyway. I'm just trying to figure out why Trump's going along with this now, because at the time they were Israel were destroying Gaza City, um, and that's basically, you know, as Trump says, he reckons about 60,000 have been killed, but I think he's putting it on the low side because he knows it's even worse than that. You know, I mean, possibly it could be hundreds of thousands have been killed by Israel, and they're part of the West, the share of the Western values. Uh, yeah, but I'm wondering why he went along with it anyway. Now, Trump, you can't tell. You can't tell one way or the other. I honestly can't tell his motives. And it might just be that he's a boaster and he wanted a Nobel Peace Prize and he's like Motley with a gold medal. It might be that. And Netanyahu might have said to him, "I'll try and get you the gold medal, the Nobel Prize. Uh, I'll give up in Gaza or something and we'll just take the West Bank or something. Um, or we'll get Gaza later or something." I don't know what the reason is. It could be that, just boasting, just because that's the way he is. I mean, he's not fit to. He should actually be on benefits, really. He shouldn't be in work at all. I would call him mentally disabled, really, um, due to boasting, being a boaster. But I'm wondering why it might be. Well, it might be because we've got the likes of Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Candace Owens, and Charlie Kirk, who are all starting to be critical of Israel. So it could be that, because really at the moment it's the MAGA and the evangelical Christians. That's really what's keeping the American support for them. And if they don't have American support, they found this out during this. They really can't look after themselves, really, because they're relying on their weapons. And as they found out with the Iran war, what Iran did is it used a lot of their old missiles so that Israel would use up all its anti-missile things, and they were using all them up. Really expensive, probably most paid by Americans, that sort of thing. So, it didn't go as well as they hoped against Iran. So, yeah, but anyway, you've got Tucker Carlson on that. They've all been saying bad things about Israel. I mean, I would call them actually being commonsensical about Israel. And Charlie Kirk, apparently, Candace Owens says she's got someone gave her a leak of a WhatsApp group Charlie Kirk was in the night before he got assassinated, and it was to do with some Israel fanatics with a lot of money. They've been sponsoring his Turning Point all the time, and they said they were going to pull out. But Charlie Kirk said he was fed up with it, and he even used the term, "It's like the old stereotypes, you can't believe it. It's hard to believe." And I think this was the day before or something. So, and he wanted to invite Tucker Carlson on, and he's been critical of Israel. Common sense on it, really. And Marjorie Taylor Greene also, and Candace Owens. And these are like big figures in the MAGA world. So, and in that thing where Netanyahu was with the American influencers, he said the right, who were against Israel, were even worse than the left, the liberals. He called them the third right, or something like that, and something to do with a term like that. So, yeah, I mean, that talk that Netanyahu done with the American influence, I think that's the worst thing he's ever done in terms of how MAGA supporters might see that, because MAGA fans are crazy, they support Israel in the way others are fanatic of another religion, that sort of thing. And then I'm wondering of another thing. Over 2 weeks ago, Saudi Arabia said they'd done a deal with Pakistan where they've got a defence pact going now, and Pakistan has nuclear weapons. So I'm wondering if that might have something to do with it. And also, Qatar gives Trump and his son-in-law a lot of money in terms of land development and everything. Trump got a $45 million gift plane from them. I mean, really, well, it was actually for the US president, but I mean, really, I mean, it seems potentially as corrupt as you can get. Um, I mean, getting his son-in-law involved again, and Stephen Witkoff has no skill at all in being a thingy. It's just, and apparently it was Sheldon and Miriam Harrelson that wanted John Bolton as part of Trump's team in the first term, and Trump didn't want him, but eventually took him to please Sheldon and that. But now John Bolton's an enemy of them, and Trump got rid of him as well. I think he was just, I don't know, too eccentric or something. I don't know, but two eccentrics in the room was too many or whatever. I don't know, but anyway, yeah, this is the sort of thing I'm looking at. So I really hope that this thing works because Trump's saying he wants it to work, because that's all it takes. All it takes is a US president to say this is happening. Usually what will happen is Israel fanatics in America will do Israel's bidding, so either the president will back down or there'll be total fanatics like Biden was, because apparently Kamala Harris has got a book at the moment. She said that she would say to Trump, not Trump, Biden, I think we should try more with the ceasefire thing and that. And Trump said, no, Biden said, no, I'm a fanatic. That's what he said. And so Biden didn't go through with it. Like I said, that should be a referendum anyway, and this sort of thing. But I'm hopeful that this might work because Trump's put all his sort of ego in with it. Whether it will or not, I'm very sceptical. If it breaks down, it'll be because of Israel. There've been bad faith in all these agreements, really, over the last. Apart from the one with Egypt, I suppose, in a way. But even then, there was problems, and so let's see how it goes. That's my take on it. I've got total sympathy for Palestine and that. It's a stain on the West what's happened, really. I don't know how anyone in the West can support it. I regard it as my sense of British fairness. When Labour talk about British values, I'm presuming they don't mean a lot of things that are now traditions in Britain. So they're actually, when they say that, they're being biased. I'll use that word rather than another word. Against other Brits who have been made British by Labour and Conservatives over the last 75 years. But yeah, I feel I'm using my sense of British fairness. If not that, then my sense of fairness. But like I say, that YouGov poll says that currently between Palestine and Israel, about 12% are sympathetic towards Israel. Before, 2 years ago, it was 10%. And for Palestine now, it's about 37% or something. I think that's all that matters, really. So we should have a referendum on this. We should have direct democracy. And if we'd had that decades ago, we'd have recognised Palestine a long time ago. Maybe 8 minutes after Israel was founded, or when Britain recognised Israel in 1950. Yeah, so that's all for just now then. Okay, bye-bye. I should go through all the things. Here's Phase 1, immediate actions. Immediate ceasefire. All military operations, including aerial and etc., are suspended. Hostage release. All living Israeli hostages are released within 72 hours. Yep, that happened. Prisoner exchange. Israel releases a large number of Palestinian prisoners and detainees. They've already not done that fully. They didn't release Barghouti or whatever his name, who's maybe the only one who could really bring all the Palestinians together. and they've been cruel to them as they've moved them out, etc. And they've been cruel to them while they took them in there. We're calling them prisoners, but are they really just detainees that a lot of them might have done nothing? We don't know, but because they've got that doctor, that Gazan doctor, I think they've still got him at the moment. They said they're going to release him in a day or two, but yeah. Partial IDF withdrawal. Israeli forces withdraw to agreed upon lines within Gaza. Yeah, so they've not fully withdrawn from there, even though it's like 25 miles radius or something, or wide each way. They've went up at 55% hit, so they're still in full control of the whole area. Full aid delivery, uninterrupted entry, so infrastructure rehabilitation, immediate aid for water, electricity, sewage. So I mean, apparently it's like the moon mostly there. About 90% of it's like the moon. Phase 2 in long-term security, no occupation, annexation. Israel agrees not to occupy or annex Gaza, so that's a good start. We'll see. They can just keep them. Well, they were. That's the way it was before. You know, they were just really. It was a concentration camp, and they were on the outside. They hadn't guarded it well enough, really. So, no forced displacement. So no Palestinians will be forced to leave Gaza. So, well, we'll see how that goes. There's still ways of doing it, you know. Demilitarization of Gaza. So, one side's to give up all their offensive infrastructure and not rebuild. So the tunnels and all that, you know, the tunnels, they're nothing like the Seven Candles story or whatever, you know. The stuff that they've not been beaten after 2 years of America and Israel. Israel trying to beat them with all America's arms. Weapons buyback, an internationally funded programme to place remaining weapons beyond use. So all the weapons have to go on one side, meanwhile the other side nuclear armed and can get any American weapon it wants. Gaza as terror-free zone. Gaza's to be de-radicalised, terror-free zone that poses no threat to neighbours. So that's about, how's that going to, are you going to brainwash people, you know? Is that going to be, I mean, really, if you look at Japan and Germany, did they have to go through this after World War II? You know, I would say, looking at the polls in Israel, it's more that the Israeli people, I think, need it more. You know, when you look at the amount that want Palestinians, things done to the Palestinians, you're talking about 60, 70, 80% of one group of Israelis are wanting it done. You know, I think it's more them that need the de-radicalisation. Amnesty for that group, if they commit to peaceful coexistence. Well, I mean, when you think of the war crimes that's been done by the other side, you know, I'm guessing they'll be wanting amnesty. They'll be wanting no one's allowed to go to the Court of Human Rights or whatever, you know, being charged under the deal on the other side. Trump's side. Safe passage for exile. Safe passage provided for members choosing to leave. That may be worrying. Maybe they're all expected to go, you know. International Stabilisation Force. Deployment of an international force for security. That would need to be Arab, really, but you need to trust them. But Palestinian police training. I mean, they've done this in the West Bank as well. You know, they used to have. Palestinians have got their own police. Transitional governments, temporary governments by a technocratic. This is where Blair's meant to come in. I mean, what an insult. I mean, Blair's been involved in trying to get an unfair peace deal done for decades over there. I don't know how he even put his name forward or agreed to, you know. I think he's damaging himself. So, 17, international oversight, governance overseen by a new international body, chaired by Trump. Oh, that's good, isn't it? Reconstruction and political future. So, it's all like a colonised thing, you know, where you're actually taking over. You're not colonising it with people, but you're, well, not yet, but you're in charge of it. Reconstruction and I mean, we've done this after Japan and Germany, and it was a success, you know. We tried it with Iraq and Afghanistan. It was a disaster because of the people there and surrounding people didn't want it to work. Reconstruction and political future. Economic development plan. Is this where Trump wants to make money or whatever? I don't know. A panel of experts will create a plan to rebuild and energise Gaza. I mean, you really don't need to do that. They'll do that themselves. Cause they had an airport and stuff, and Israel bombed it. You know, they had an airport they built in the late 90s and stuff. But Israel bombed it in 2001 and that. Reconstruction and political future. Economic development plan. A panel of experts will create a plan to rebuild and energise Gaza. Well, if it's like the Marshall Plan, then fair enough, you know. Conditional self-determination, a conditional pathway to Palestinian self-determination and possible statehood. Withdrawal to the security perimeter. I mean, they're only talking about Gaza here, they're not talking about the West Bank, so maybe Netanyahu said, okay, we'll take the West Bank and we'll give up Gaza. The final stage of Israeli military withdrawal to a lasting security buffer zone. So, I don't know, all the bad faith seems to me to be on the Israel side, so we'll see how it goes. If you've left it be, I think the Palestinians would make a big success of it. And maybe that worries Israel a bit, you know, because I think they're going to be too much of a success in terms of education and building and workers, etc. You know, because, so, anyway, best of luck, all my sympathies with Palestine and that, you know. We'll see how it goes. But I'm just grateful. The only difference, as I say, this time is that maybe they've got Trump's word this time, which makes a big difference, although Trump's word's worth nothing really. But if he sticks with it, then it is. But we don't know if he will stick with it, you know. But okay, there we go.